This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we're fortunate tonight to have as our guest a young gentleman from the northwestern part of the state named Andrew Sorrell. He is a state representative from the Muscle Shoals, Tuscumbia area, and he is running for state auditor of Alabama in next year's Republican primary. Andrew, good to have you on the show.
Really appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Good to have you. Had to come a long way to be here in Montgomery to be on our show.
Yes, sir, I did, but I think it's going to be worth it. And by the way, we pronounce it Sorrell. Sorrell's probably the right way. A sorrel is a red horse, but we say Sorrell.
Sorrell. Now, how does Jeff from Hartford say his name?
He says Sorrels.
He says Sorrell. You say Sorrell.
That's correct, yes.
I bet y'all got confused a lot in the floor of the house.
Happens all the time.
But that's not a real common name.
No, it's really not. We're probably very distantly related in some way.
I like Mayor. Both of y'all are freshman House members. He was mayor of Hartford for a long time. But now, this is your first term in the House of Representatives, isn't it? Or second term?
Yes, that's correct. This is my first term. I was elected in 2018 when I was 32 years old. I replaced Marcel Black, who was a 28-year
You followed on
incumbent.
Marcel.
I sure did.
He and I were good friends.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
We were best friends in the House. Do you ever see him?
I do. I go out to breakfast with him occasionally.
Do you really?
Not so much during COVID, but yeah, he told me when I got elected, he said, "Can I come speak at your investiture?" I said, "Absolutely." I let him speak there. He gave me some really good advice. He said, on the 4th floor, he said the women's bathroom's on the left and the men's on the right. He said, if you go up a floor or down a floor, it's reversed, so be careful.
That was Marcel's advice.
That was his advice to me, and I've used that numerous times.
I bet he's glad to be just practicing law now, isn't he?
Probably so.
Be sure and tell him I said hello.
I'll do it.
Marcel and I served together for a long time. I served 16 years in the House.
Well, I know, and you see how Marcel was able to last so long, because when I was knocking doors, of course, I was running as a Republican, Marcel was a Democrat, but I had so many people say, "Oh, I always vote Republican." I mean, except for Marcel. I got to vote for Marcel. And he just had that connection with people in the district. They didn't care what party Marcel was in, they were voting for the person, and I think that's how he was able to stay down there for 28 years.
Yeah. They would always say his district was in jeopardy from him because he still ran as a Democrat, but he still kept getting elected. It probably would have caught up with him eventually, though.
Well, probably so.
Oh, Marcel. We both big Alabama football fans, too.
Yeah? Well, when I won that seat, I only got 52% of the vote. I was the narrowest victory in the state house in 2018.
Was it that narrow?
It was very close, and I was
against
running
a Democrat.
Again, yes, sir. He was a realtor. He ran a real strong campaign. Really gave me a run for my money.
Oh, as a Democrat.
That's correct.
And Marcel didn't get involved in the race, did he?
Marcel did endorse my opponent, actually.
Because he was a Democrat?
Yeah, I assume so.
Oh, but there was a bookstore that had a book signing right there on the square in Tuscumbia. Do you have Tuscumbia in your district?
I have almost all of Tuscumbia. About 80% of it's in my district.
Does that bookstore still exist over there on the corner? You look down on the river, and Howell Hefford's son, Tom, was there and everything.
What's the name of the bookstore?
I can't remember now.
There is a little bookstore on the corner. I don't know if it's the same one.
It's the same one.
Okay.
It kind of looks down on the river or something.
Yeah, there's like Spring Park down there.
Yeah, Spring Park, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, your area of the state's got a lot of political tradition. I mean, you got old Heffin. Did you ever see Heffin, you little boy?
If I did, I don't remember. But I know his son, Tom.
You know Tom? Tom and I were fraternity brothers, Alabama.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tom actually considered running for State House District 3.
Did he really?
He sure did, yeah.
Well, he'd run as a Democrat.
He would have, yes.
He might have lost. He lost a judgeship up there one time.
He did. He did. But I'll tell you, running against the Heflin in my area, I mean, that's, that he might have done pretty well. I don't know.
Oh, Judge loved that area of the state. We all called him Judge. It is pretty. That's what I was going to tell you. That Spring Park made me think about that. They have all those big rallies up there.
They do. They sure do.
Andrew, that was the biggest, that whole area of the state was labor.
That's right.
There was a big Labor Day thing, Spring Park.
Yes.
That have all the labor things. People don't realize that back in the bygone days that Alabama was a labor state.
No, you're absolutely right. It was, and we do have a huge Labor Day
the
rally
Reynolds
there.
plant up there was one of the biggest employers in the state. It was unionized.
Yes, that's correct.
Are you too young to remember that?
No, I remember that.
Remember it being the Reynolds plant?
I do, and then it changed it. I think it became Wise Alloys after that. It's gone through a couple of different transitions.
Yeah, they have all those labor rallies. You know, people don't realize that how big labor was in the state coming out of World War II. Do you know that Alabama was the most unionized state in the country per capita?
I did not realize
You
that.
had to have labor's endorsement to win a statewide race. Big Jim Folsom won it. Now you start with the Tennessee Valley. You had Reynolds Aluminum in your area of the state, unionized. All the tire plants, the ones in Tuscaloosa, Goodrich in Tuscaloosa, Goodyear and Gadsden, Goodrich and Opelika were all unionized. All the paper mills in Tuscaloosa were unionized. Tuscaloosa was a big union town. And then you go to the biggest employers in the state, the two biggest employers in the state, all the TVA workers were unionized.
Right.
Did you know that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's been interesting to see the transition though, because now some of those labor voters are beginning to vote Republican. I think that might have started under Trump, but they've been seeing, hey, we've got people coming in here taking our jobs, that type thing, and they've started voting Republican. Now, I went to someone's house who had committed to vote for me, and I knew he was a union member, and he had my opponent's yard sign up. So I knocked on his door and I said, hey, what's going on? I thought you were voting for me. He said, oh, I am voting for you. He said, just nobody can know that. So there's still some of that going on, but yes, some of those people have started voting Republican now.
But now, do you think that then in the future, Alabama labor people will vote Republican and endorse Republican candidates? As Republican, if you're going to win the statewide race, you got to run as a Republican.
I agree.
So they're wasting their time if they endorse a Democrat.
I completely agree with you, and you've seen that transition with the trial lawyers. You've seen it with AEA. You've seen a lot of those traditionally Democrat institutions come around and begin supporting Republicans. You know, AEA did a poll, and I think it was 70–75% of the teachers they represented said they were Republican, and that was kind of a wake-up moment for them.
I bet it was. Yeah. Times have changed in Alabama.
They certainly are.
Andrew, but now you're very conservative. You have a very conservative voting record in the House, don't you?
Yes, sir, I do. The last 3 scorecards that have come out have either ranked me tied for first or number 1 by myself in terms of conservative voting record. And I'm proud of my conservative voting record, Steve. I don't run from it.
I wouldn't either. I wouldn't be proud of it too. Now, what about what groups have measured y'all?
So the American Conservative Union scorecard came out a couple weeks ago. Now they run a year behind, so that's measuring the 2020 legislative session. I was ranked a 90. I was the only legislator in Alabama to score a 90, got their Conservative Excellence Award. The Alabama Policy Institute got a perfect 100 on their scorecard this year. Now this is the first year they've done a scorecard. In 2020, the Alabama Policy Institute also gave me their Conservative Policy Warrior Award for being a, quote, fiscal conservative unafraid to stand alone on his principles. I took a few tough fiscal votes in the House, and Alabama Policy Institute noticed and appreciated. And finally, the Club for Growth Foundation rated me, the second place person was 21 points behind me on the scorecard. So and they measured 13 pro-economic votes in 2020. So their 2021 scorecard has not come out yet. So I'm not just first on one scorecard, I'm first on all the scorecards because I'm very consistent. It's very easy. I can hand anybody in that house my machine and they could vote for me. They know how I'm going to vote. I'm going to vote against infringements on liberties and freedoms. I'm going to vote against higher taxes and fees. I'm going to vote against borrowing money. That's pretty basic conservatism.
Andrew, what about David Wheeler from Vestavia is in your freshman class. He's been my friend a long time. He and I are close to Senator Shelby. And he always talks about how close y'all have kind of like almost a freshman coalition. Y'all are a team almost.
I agree with that. And I think it got stronger this year because during COVID, they would put half of us in the chamber and half of us upstairs in the overflow room in the gallery. And the freshmen were largely upstairs in the overflow room. And I think that kind of bonded us together even more. But David's a good friend of mine. I served
He's for you.
Yeah, well, it's good to know that.
He's campaigning for you to invest in Jefferson County.
Yeah, he's been a friend. He was the treasurer of the Alabama Republican Party, and I served on that steering committee, the executive.
That's why he likes you so much, right? And y'all got to be friends serving in the legislature.
We did. We were friends before we got there, and I was excited to see him win his primary. I knew he was going to win. He was in a very conservative district. Of course, when I won my primary, that didn't guarantee anything in my race.
Because Marcel had been in that seat for a long time.
That's right. The seat was actually said to be unwinnable by a Republican.
Well, actually, that area where you represent was one of the most pro-union areas of the state.
Yes, sir. Yes, you're absolutely right.
And that was the reason it was Democratic for years.
Yeah, and it was very slow to turn. We're 15, 20 years behind the rest of the state kind of turning.
all those counties below you have been Republican for several years now.
That's correct.
Marion and all those down there.
Yes.
They knew they were. Well, gosh, one of them was Republican before.
Winston's been Republican a long time.
Yeah, that was Republican. Who represents Winston County now?
I believe that is Wadsworth. Tim Wadsworth has Winston County.
You know, the most interesting, this is probably a bygone thing too. Do you know they used to have a Terry family reunion in Moulton every year?
No.
Have you not ever heard of that?
No, I haven't.
There was a Moulton and that county below you, the county Moulton's in, Lawrence County.
Lawrence County, yes, sir.
It's the most clannish county in the state. And Alabama's got some pretty clannish counties. And you had to be a member of the Terry family, the last name Terry. And it was so prominent that nobody could get elected to any office unless they were a part of that Terry family. And they had a Terry family reunion every Labor Day up there. And back in bygone days, everybody running for governor would make the Terry family reunion. In 1970-something, when old Albert Brewer and Bill Baxley and Jerry Beasley were all running for governor, they all would fly in and make the Terry family reunion. It was a big thing. And I used to serve, when I served in the House all those years, they would change representatives every 4 years up there. They run against each other and beat each other up there. And they get in family feuds, almost like the Hatfields and McCoys. And I'd mosey up to one of them. I'd say, "You beat old so-and-so, are y'all kin?" He said, we all, I said, "Are you a Terry?" He said, "My great-grandma was a Terry." Mm-hmm. So you couldn't, there were two things you couldn't get elected in your area of the state, especially that county, if you weren't a Terry. But your whole area of the state was known that you couldn't win if you weren't Church of Christ. Did you know that was a bygone thing known for your area of the state?
Absolutely. I remember I worked a lot of political races from 2010 to 2016 before I ran myself. And yeah, there's a very strong Church of Christ voting bloc up there.
Still is.
But absolutely. You see that with Senator Tim Melson and a lot of the county commissioners in Lauderdale County. I ran their campaigns. They're all Church of Christ. Danny Pettis, the commission chairman, all of them up there.
It was like you had to be a member of the Church of Christ.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd ask those guys from Lawrence County, "Are you a Terry?" "Yeah." "You Church of Christ?" "Yeah."
Yeah, and speaking of Terry, now I do know a young lady named Laura Terry Powell, and I bet you she's part of the Terry clan.
I guarantee she is.
She ran for office.
Well, you couldn't get elected if you weren't a Terry. Yeah. I mean, up there, you had to be part. You had to say, my great-grandma, my granny was a Terry.
Yeah.
You know, and he's real proud of it.
And I do have North Lawrence County is part of State House District 3.
You have a little bit of Lawrence?
Well, I have 5 precincts in Lawrence, yes.
Well, but none of the city, none of the town or anything?
Just, no,
Town
mostly
Creek's
just,
in Lawrence, isn't it?
I have half of Town Creek, the northern half of Town Creek, Cortland area, North Cortland, Hillsboro, that area. Basically up to the Tennessee River.
Well, you didn't know about the Terry family reunion?
I did not. I'm learning from you.
Oh, it was a barbecue. It was a day-long event. They'd have barbecue all day long. Every candidate for statewide office and judicial races, but all the statewide candidates. It was that and Mule Day in Hamilton or Winfield was a go-to event. You had to go to both of them.
And how about the Henniger Potato Festival?
Yeah.
Is that on the list?
I tell you what, that wasn't on the list then. I tell you what's getting on the list is that what Ledbetter has up there?
He does the breakfast with Steve Livingston up there.
Okay, that's getting to be a thing.
It is. We went to that. They've done it for 6 years now, and I was at that on July 3rd.
I was going but backed out.
Okay.
Yeah, this little sinus thing I've got going right now I was going to drive with Wheeler up there. We were going to ride together from Birmingham, and but I missed it this year. I'm going to make it next year.
That's right, because he was there.
Yeah.
He sure was.
Yeah, I'm going to make it next year. Livingston and Ledbetter both called me on the first of the year. I said, "Get my calendar ready." I said, "Flowers, put July 3rd on your calendar now." And I missed it. I'm not going to miss it next year.
Big turnout.
Well, let me ask you this about your auditor's race. What made you decide to run for auditor?
2 things, really. In my first year in the legislature, 2019, we went into session in March. There were 2 bills introduced to actually eliminate the auditor's position. And when those bills kind of got dropped, I had to go research, hey, is this a position that we could actually do without? So after I studied—
being as conservative as you are.
That's right. I thought, hey, maybe if we can cut a little bit of government, I would be up for that. But I went and researched the position, and I decided, no, we can't do without the position. I ended up opposing the bill. So I learned what it was that the auditor does, and we can talk about that in a second. The second thing I did is this year I carried some legislation actually dealing with the state auditor's office. So that just really piqued my interest in it.
Tell me about what you find about the auditor's office you think we need it for.
So for less than $1 million a year budget, the state auditor keeps track of all the state's property. Now we're not talking real estate here. We're talking the pickup trucks, we're talking the weapons, we're talking the computers. $1.7 billion of state-owned property spread out over 176 different state boards and agencies. That's a big job, and it's an important one. And, you know, we lose about 1% of our state property every year.
Well, who accounts for it? What do y'all? The auditor does the audit, and you say, well, here's 1% missing. What do they do about it?
Well, if they think that it's stolen, or they can prove, you know, waste or something like fraud, something like that, then you turn it over to the AG for prosecution. But the question we got to ask ourselves is, if we didn't have a state auditor, then how much percent would be missing every year?
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah, if people didn't know that the auditor was coming in behind them to make sure that everything was there.
Because there's nothing to keep somebody from just stealing a computer.
Well, that's exactly right. And through no fault of the auditor's office, they have not been able to really do the audits the last year and a half because of COVID. They weren't going into these places. So now they're running their first cycle of audits in over a year, and I'm honestly a little afraid of what they might find.
Well, Andrew, what about the school systems aren't part of the auditor's job, are they?
No, I don't believe that they audit the schools.
Just the state property.
That's right. I looked through the list of all the agencies and everything. I didn't see the schools on there.
Are you responsible for counting all the automobiles?
Yes.
So tell me what all y'all keep track of the automobiles?
Yeah, okay, so it's anything worth $500 or more. And when I say worth, that means the initial cost. So it may be depreciated down to $150, but if it cost $500 originally, then it's going to be on that report. So it could be an iPad, it could be a desk, really anything, even things worth less than $500 if they're sensitive in nature. So for instance, a computer hard drive.
Yeah.
Might only be $200. It's still going to be tracked by the state auditor's office.
Well now, do y'all, if the highway department, any department, y'all in charge of every, like the highway department don't have their own auditor, you're in charge of the whole thing.
So every department has a person in the department that is responsible for keeping track of the inventory. And then when the auditor's office comes in to do the audit, they work with that individual on the audit. Mm-hmm. So yes, you do have some help. And now Jim Ziegler, starting in 2019, implemented the RFID chips. And he started, so you can walk into a building now, in other words, and you can scan and you can see what's missing. So you maybe scan the building and they're supposed to have 200 items, they have 194. Then you go looking for the missing 6 items. Okay, maybe one's at home with so-and-so, his iPad's in the truck or whatever. You just kind of narrow it down and search it like that. It's made the auditor's office way more efficient. And one of the things I want to do is make sure we complete that project. I want all the state boards and agencies to have those RFID chips.
Yeah. You know, one thing about the auditor's job is you're right there when they first come in the Capitol. You know, so you'll be almost like the greeter. You know, if you stay in your office, you'll have some. Well, that's a good way to campaign, though. 4 years around, you know, if you're in your office. But you're right, Ziegler ain't got a very big staff. I think it's just him and Hope in there. Every time I would go in there, well, you know, I mean, it'd be right. Hope and Ziegler would be there, but Hope.
Now they do have another office. There's 2 offices, yeah. So the total staff is 9 people. But some of them just stay on the road. You know, there's North Alabama, Central, and South Alabama auditor that go around, and there's a couple part-times. There's the chief of staff, Kathy Lynch, works remotely right now. So there's about a staff of about 9 people total.
Andrew, what about but you got to move down here and live down in Montgomery, ain't you?
That's what the law requires. If you're a constitutional officer, you have to have a residence in Montgomery.
Now, a lot of these Supreme Court justices don't have to live in Montgomery. I don't guess they're required to, are they?
I guess not. I'm not sure. Those may not be considered that same type of office. I'm not sure. Yeah.
But now you're married, but you got a child on the way.
We are due with our first child on October 12th. I'm very excited about that. Celebrated my first Father's Day last month.
October the 12th is when your baby's due?
Yes.
Do y'all know whether it's a male or female?
We could know, but we are deciding not to. We're going to be surprised.
Is your wife from up there too? Where you from?
My wife is actually from South Carolina. Mm-hmm. So I met her on a trip and got her phone number, thought she was pretty, introduced myself, got her phone number. We ended up dating long distance. She was from Greenville, South Carolina. And I remember I would drive over there almost every weekend to go see her, meet her family.
How long a drive was it?
8 hours one way.
Is that right? You really were in love? Where were you?
Well, literally probably the first day I met her, I knew that I wanted to marry her.
She moved to live with you in Tuscumbia?
She did. When we got married, she moved over here after our honeymoon, and then her parents followed her. Her parents and her brother, so now they live in my state house district as well. Only complaint I have is, Steve, they arrived 5 days too late to vote for me.
They couldn't raise them at the last minute, huh?
No. So my parents and Hannah's parents both live right there by us in Muscle Shoals, so we're going to have a lot of help taking care of the grandkid, no doubt.
Which one of those towns, Florence, Muscle Shoals, or Tuscumbia, is the largest? What's the population of those?
The population of Florence is 40, 45,000.
It's that big?
Yeah, it's fairly large. A lot of people don't realize this because it's not one city, but if you combined the Quad Cities, Florence, Muscle Shoals, Sheffield, Tuscumbia, you would have a city of almost 100,000 people.
Yeah, you would.
And really, they're all right beside each other. I mean, unless you live there, you can't really tell when you're going from one to the other.
Right, I know you can.
Yeah, but Muscle Shoals, Sheffield, and Tuscumbia are all in the 10 to 14,000 range in population.
Yeah. But you went to school all your life in Muscle Shoals.
I did. I graduated Muscle Shoals High School 2004. Set a record at UNA. I graduated with my 4-year business management degree from UNA in 2 years. So I graduated.
How'd you do? You had some things come out of high school?
Yeah. When I came out of high school, I was already a college sophomore.
In Muscle Shoals High School? Was that Muscle Shoals High School?
That's correct. Yes.
Well, one of those schools is not named Muscle Shoals. It's named after somebody else.
Yeah, there's a McBride. She donated. The McBride family donated a lot of money, or a lot of land, excuse me, to the school system, and they named one of the schools after.
One of the high schools named after McBride?
No, I think now it's the elementary school is named after McBride. It's been changed a couple times. When I was in school, it was middle school.
But Muscle Shoals High School. So you were a sophomore when you got ready to go to North Alabama then?
That's correct. I enrolled at UNA and I was already a sophomore, and then I took overloads every semester, and I went during the summers, and I finished my college degree in 2 years. So I graduated college in 2006.
You weren't 20 years old?
That's correct. Yeah, I was 20.
Well, let me ask you this. You're not a lawyer, you're a businessman, aren't you?
Yes, sir. I went to school for business management.
What kind of businesses do you run?
2 very different businesses. I started a college textbook store when I was 16 in my parents' screen porch.
Are you serious?
I am. I sure did.
Just for North Alabama students?
It was internet.
Okay.
It was an internet. And then in 2010, 4 years after I graduated college, I had enough capital together from that where I opened a brick and mortar store in Huntsville by UAH. So I've been selling textbooks for 19 years.
Textbooks, I've been on.
College textbooks, yep. We used to go walk around on UNA's campus, buy books from people, and then turn around and sell them on Amazon. And we would pay $5 or $10 more than what the bookstore was paying, turn around and sell them on Amazon. And that's kind of how we got started. My other business, though, is Gold Guns and Guitars. Very different type business, kind of a high-class, high-end pawn shop and gun retail store. And I have 2 locations. That one is in Florence, and I also have a location of it actually in Mac McCutcheon's district over in Huntsville on Highway 72.
Do you have to manage them yourself, or do you have somebody manage them, or how you?
My business partner runs the Gold Guns and Guitars locations for me. Yes. So I put the money up, he runs it. That was our deal. I go in there and work occasionally. I do the accounting for the stores and stuff like that, but I probably only work there maybe on average 1 day a month, something like that.
Now you've done pretty good in business. You've loaned your campaign some money, $250,000, haven't you?
I did. I thought it was important to get some money in the campaign early, and there's a lot of upfront expenditures in a campaign. You know, I went ahead and ordered 50,000 palm cards, and I plan to hand them out. We've already handed out 6,000 of them. You know, there's just a lot of the beads that we hand out in parades, for instance. You know, we attach beads to our cards, and when we're walking the parade route, we hand them out to the kids. Kids rip the card off and hand it to their parents. It works great. We ordered 25,000 beads up front. A lot of upfront expenditures, so that's kind of just to jumpstart the campaign and get it going. And my fundraiser's next week, hoping I have a good round of fundraising for July.
You probably will. But now you hadn't got anybody running yet. You followed running, have you?
There are actually 2 other people who have announced.
Oh, Cook's running.
That's correct. Stan Cook's running, and then there's an attorney from Florence who's running as well.
In your home area?
Yes.
He's running for auditor too?
Yes, sir.
Oh, well, we don't call his name because they give him publicity.
That's right. I didn't say it.
Oh, that's right.
If you're not going to mention it, I'm not.
I didn't know there was somebody up there running for. They actually announced they're running and everything.
He has. Now, I don't believe that he's from that area. He moved there relatively recently, but he is somewhat political. He's worked at the Public Service Commission and stuff, so he does have some political connections. But this is an open seat, and Ziegler's kind of popularized the seat because he's been such a visible state auditor. And I think there's a lot of people, for that reason, there's a lot of people looking at this seat.
Yeah. So you don't think y'all be the only ones running?
Oh no, I expect we could see another 1 or 2 jump in the race.
Yeah, yeah. You run your own race. It doesn't matter to you.
Well, I mean, I know the race is going to runoff probably either way. So the goal is just to make the runoff and then win that.
Yeah.
And you know, as you know, in Alabama, if you win the Republican nomination, you're probably good for the general. So
I think you are.
Putting my effort into the primary.
Yeah. Well, that's all you got to do. If I were you, my advice would be, if you win the primary, just sit home, because all you can do is hurt yourself.
Yeah, don't make any mistakes for 6 months. You'll probably be fine.
I told Tubville that. He was sitting on the show, and I said, he was a novice to politics, you know, and I could tell he had never been around. I said, Tubville, you know, you win that seat. You win the Republican primary. You don't have to do anything after that. Oh, I got a campaign. No, no, no. I don't care how much money Doug Jones has got. He ain't gonna beat you.
Yeah.
You know, a Democrat's gonna lose that seat. I said, and I said the other thing, if you're gonna do anything, just say he's tied to Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah. It's good advice.
I told him, I said, I'd have a picture with him and Nancy Pelosi, and that's all. I wouldn't say a word.
Yeah.
Said he votes with her.
Yeah. When you get ahead, you don't do debates, and sometimes you just stop because you can hurt yourself.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's advice I'll give you. So if you win, you can say, well, old Steve Flowers told me I ain't got to do anything after May 24th.
All right, I'll give you the credit. But we're still 10 months out from the primary, 11 from the runoff, so there's plenty of work left to do in this campaign. But, you know, one of the things I do like about this campaign is I was one of the first to announce. I think Stan beat me in the race by a week or so. But I've been running hard now. This is my fourth full week on the campaign trail. I work 1 day a week. I campaign the other 5. And I think that's given me a good head start. I mean, we've knocked over 1,000 doors already. We've handed out 6,000 cards at events. I've personally spoken at probably 30 different events around the state. So, I mean, I'm really working it.
Well, maybe you get some exposure from this show, too.
Hope so.
You put it on your website and everything. And we've got a good viewing audience in the River region. I've been doing this show for 12, 15 years now. And so we've got a good audience. And I think you'll do well in this area. Just campaign down here. Let them know you care about it. But our time's up, Andrew. It goes by in a hurry, doesn't it?
It sure did.
Folks, I hate to tell you, our time is up. And we want to thank you viewers for watching. And we want to thank State Representative Andrew Sorrell from the Quad Cities of Florence, Muscle Shoals, Tuscumbia for being our guest today. He's been one of the most conservative House members in his first term, first 4-year quadrennium in the legislature. And we thank you for being our guest tonight. We thank you viewers for watching. Hope you tune again next week for Alabama Politics. Thank y'all.